reaction from the U.S. I don't think that the U.S. is going to dare to send troops to Venezuela, at least at this moment. But they can try to do some sort of Honduras operation or Panama operation, but they don't. I believe that if they do that, they will show how erratic and how very badly informed they are about what is Venezuela, especially because we are a bigger country than those Central American countries. We are better equipped, and most importantly, because we have the National Constituent Assembly, and the National Constituent Assembly is 100% Chavista and is above all the democratic institutions. What I'm trying to tell you is that if something happens against Maduro, of course we have to follow the steps in the constitutions, but also if something is broken, the National Constituent Assembly can regulate and create the laws to try to keep the system going. We can talk about later if we have questions and answers. And now, just talking about what can be done from the U.S., the first thing is try. I believe that we Venezuelans need to encourage you to promote any kind of solidarity activity, like sending letters, making phone calls, sending emails, doing forums like the one that you are doing right now, making demonstrations or marches like the one that is being organized to Washington, D.C. for March the 16th, I believe. That's very important for us. I mean, we in Venezuela need that raised spirit of the Chavista people here in Venezuela. Also, it's important for us, and this is something very important because I've been running a website called OrinocoTribune.com. I encourage you to visit us. And I try to post information there about Venezuela. The name of the website is OrinocoTribune.com. And I have to read a lot of stuff before posting it. And one thing that worried me the most about the things that I've been reading lately from the US is that trend of pseudo-progressive people that says that they love Chavismo and that they love the Bolivarian revolution, but Maduro is a bad guy, he's an authoritarian dictator, and he kills people in the middle of the street, and he is corrupt. That trend, I have read it a lot lately, especially from progressive sources, and that scares me a lot because if you ask me, I believe that I believe that some of them might be legitimate, good Trotskyist friend of us. But maybe another ones are people pay to do that, just to be frank, to divide, to make you have doubts about what happened in Venezuela. And the truth is that whatever they say about Maduro being a corrupt or dictator or whatever is a big lie. It's a big lie. I mean, I can tell you that Maduro might be, the most efficient president of the world, but he's not a dictator. He's not a corrupt guy, at least from the way I see it. So I just want to raise the attention about that. That is something that is especially in the academic, progressive U.S. world. So anyway, and just to finish, another important thing is to work actively in social networks. I believe that mostly currently the activity in the social networks is bigger than the activity in the mass media that we know, like CNN or Fox News, and to counter the lies that they speed all the time against Venezuela, people like you and me have to be more active in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, liking the content that you like, sharing the content that you like, commenting in the content that you like, and debating with comments in the content that you dislike. That kind of activity is very important to try to counter that information. Wherever you see an information that you know that is Via Venezuela, post a link with a website with a different information, with the information from the Venezuelan, from the Chavista perspective, at least, to make the people have at least the two sides of the story, because you hear a lot that the Chavistas we only post the information from our perspective, and that's true, because, and not because we don't recognize that there are always two sides of the stories, but because we know that the mass media so aggressive that they present their side of the story that we don't have any more options that present also our side of the story. I'm talking about journalistic, work that usually has to be balanced, but in situations like the Venezuelan ones, you cannot follow all the journalistic rules because the mass media do that with us. So we need to present our perspective about what happened in Venezuela. So I encourage you to be very active in social media, and also I encourage you to visit maritaca.com. And that's it. Thank you. I don't know if you're going to have questions or not. You let me know.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we do. That would be great, Jesus, if you have the time.
Yeah, we're going to thank Jesus. Says no
Thank
signal.
you. I hear like an echo. I don't hear it. I don't hear you very clear.
Can you hear us now?
I hear you, but with a lot of echo. It's like that there's like a redundancy or.
Okay, can you hear now?
That's better. That's
okay,
better.
Good, good. Okay, well, Jesus, we're glad to see you again, and we really miss you a lot here in Detroit. You would come up quite regularly to address us here in the city. It's good to see you're still doing the work of the revolution.
Yes.
And that's why we have been picketing for the last 3 weeks at National Public Radio, their outlet here in the city, because they are part of the problem. They're spreading this disinformation about Venezuela. They're only presenting the side of the Pentagon and Wall Street, and it's as if there's no other side to the story. And I was glad last weekend to see the huge rally in Caracas. They did have to show that on the BBC, and I looked very closely at the people who were there. And the people seemed healthy. They seemed to be well fed and happy. Some of the people were bigger than I am. I didn't see anybody look like they were starving, with skin and bones, with their stomachs protruding, dying in the streets due to starvation and thirst. I didn't see that. And it was hundreds of thousands of people out there. So, we have to keep trying to promote the truth about what's going on in Venezuela. We want to open up now for question and answers. Elena just walked in. You want to start us out?
Bienvenidos.
Thank you.
This is Elena.
Hola.
A couple questions for you regarding the elections.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
We live in Detroit, Michigan, where our elections were known to be rigged. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the election process and if we have...
Yes, that's nice.
Okay. Tell us about the election there.
Listen, if you ask me, and this is not because I'm a Chavista, I mean, the Venezuelan electoral system is bulletproof. Let me tell you how it works. I mean, we have, during the whole presidential election process, the days before the elections, during the elections, and after the elections, we have 18 audits. 18. In those audits, you have representatives for all political parties, and you cannot go to the next audit if the previous one is not approved.
Can you tell me how many parties there are?
Wow, in Venezuela there are I don't know exactly, but I believe that from the opposition there should be around 8 or 12, something like that, going from the smallest ones to the biggest ones. And of course, in the Chavista side, you have like 6 or 8 also progressive socialist communist parties, and most of them unite around Maduro, of course. But going back to the election, during the election, we implemented in 2002 the fingerprint scanning. So we did that to avoid the one person, multiple votes option that you and I know that happen everywhere. That one person can vote 2, 3, 4, or maybe 10 times. So with this print scanning, whenever you are going to vote, they scan your fingerprint. And if you already voted, the machine is going to tell you that you are not able to vote because of your fingerprints. We implemented that in 2002. So the system since then has been getting better. And that's when President Carter from the Carter Foundation, I don't remember the name of the
Carter Center.
That's when he said that the Venezuelan electoral system was one of the better in the world. One of the reasons is because of that. But also after the electoral process, you have to count the votes in public. And you have to, you have to do the scrutiny of the votes in public. In front of opposition factors and everyone that wants to be there. And the day after the election, you have the website of our electoral council, our electoral body, that publish all the votes, board by board, school by school, county by county, and you will see if there is a contradiction in the result of the electoral board where you voted. If you participate in the public scrutiny, you will see if there is a discrepancy between what you saw the day before and what you saw on the website the day after. So the system is completely robust. So it's impossible to say that our system is rigged or something like that.
So, can I ask one more?
Go ahead.
What was the process then for bringing in this guy that they just said was the new president?
Guaido, are you talking about the process? Yeah, well, I don't have, actually that guy was someone, no one talked about that guy until a few weeks ago, even in Venezuela. I was hearing, he was elected as deputy for Vargas State in the elections of 2015, where the opposition gained control of the National Assembly. He actually didn't win in that electoral district. He was not the first, he was the second right-winger that won a deputy seat in the National Assembly. So, and he was elected with 93,000 votes. What I've been reading lately is that the guy was prepared by the U.S. and traveled extensively since 2015 until this year to the U.S. and received all U.S. pro-democracy, USAID, NET workshops and training. So the guy, a lot of people just say that he is like a CIA agent that is just doing what he's trying to do, which is following orders from the U.S., if you ask me. They try at the beginning to make a good photos of him, to make him look nice, to make him look strong, but the fact is that the guy has not delivered and he doesn't have any sort of popular support. If you ask me, among right-wingers, the most popular guy is Leopoldo Lopez, the guy that is the boss of Guaido because he's the chief of the political party that Guaido belongs to, which is Voluntad Popular. And Leopoldo Lopez is in house arrest since the Guarimbas, the terrorist incidents of 2014. and because he promoted those terrorist incidents in Venezuela in 2014. So Leopoldo Lopez is completely, 1,000,000% more popular among right-wingers than Guaido. No one knew about Guaido before last month.
Austin, you got a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Can you come closer?
Yes.
Sorry, the microphone do not help me.
Yes, my question is on the economy. You said it's stabilizing. Do you think that there's some chance that Venezuelan economic growth in real terms can grow sometime soon with the oil embargo against them or sanctions and that sort of thing?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't see it easy. I believe that it's not gonna be easy. What I mentioned you about the economy getting a little bit better is like because I'm always optimistic. But the truth is that the Venezuelan economy is in very bad shape, and we know that we are going to have additional sanctions from the U.S. So I don't see like the forecast like very promising for Venezuelan economy, if you ask me. But we can try to do our best. Actually, I'm surprised if you ask me about how we have been, a lot of people say, even the progressive friends of us, because that's like a idea that has been around for decades, that we are dependent on food from abroad. But the truth is that we have been somehow blockade lately, at least for the last couple of years, and in recent weeks we have our border crossed with Colombia and Brazil closed, and we still have food here. You know what I'm trying to tell you? That in circumstances like the ones that we are living right now, you see the real strength or not of an economy. So I hope that pushes us to be more, not completely independent, because no country can be completely independent, but at least a little bit more self-sufficiency in terms of food, in terms of basic production to keep us, moving as an economy. But the fact is, your question is completely right in terms of I don't see, it's not going to be easy. And if you ask me, I believe that they are going to keep attacking, putting pressure on the black market exchange rate to keep the hyperinflation running as it has been running for the last 2 years. So it's not an easy task. I don't see easy, but I don't believe that that's going to break the Chavista spirit. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if I make it clear, but right now it's more evident than ever that the U.S. and the right-wingers are trying to destroy Venezuelan economy just to get rid of Maduro, or to get rid of the Chavismo. So that gives you more energy to keep resisting. And I believe that that's the spirit that we need to increase, and we need to do things inside Venezuela to promote that. The sanctions on the oil industry on the other side, they are going to keep doing that, but Venezuela has been showing that we have some maneuvering capability, and we have been signing agreements right now. India is the #1 importer of Venezuelan oil, for example. They jumped from 300,000 barrels per day to 600,000 barrels per day, even though the U.S. government threatened them not to do so.
Is that India?
And we have been finding ways with the Indians to try to make those agreements happen. And oil is not corn, what I'm trying to tell you is that oil is a strategy commodity that everyone wants. So they're going to put trouble on us, and that's, of course, create additional costs. But we are always going to be able to sell our oil to anyone that needs it. So that's to give you an idea on the economy issue.
Hi, I just want to ask a few things. So, do you believe that with like a lot of the aid that was going to come in to the U.S., I know, like, I did hear, like, at least friends around of mine talking about, like, a lot of those, like, aid being, like, weapons going to a lot of, like, Colombian death squads that potentially want to, like, you know, like, participate in an intervention into Venezuela.
Can you repeat the question because the audio did not help me, or getting closer to the microphone, sorry.
Would you believe that a lot of the aid that was supposed to be quote-unquote humanitarian, would a lot of that, like, I guess, in reality, like, the weapons that would come from the U.S. go to, let's say, like, Colombian death squads?
I got it. Yes, that's a good point. A lot of people say, I mean, Elliot Abrams, everyone knows in the U.S. who is Elliot Abrams.
Yep.
He was put in jail for lying to the Congress a few years ago because of the Iran Contras crisis, and they basically what they did was to deliver weapons to the Contras in Nicaragua in the 80s. So whenever we hear about humanitarian aid and Elliot Abrams being behind that, you can understand that we only can think about weapons being smuggled into Venezuela. So of course we are afraid of that. They can do that, and we are going to try to stop any attempt to smuggle weapons inside Venezuela. But the border between Colombia and Venezuela is a very complicated and full of small paths that is hard to control. Actually, before last weekend, when the U.S. and the right-wingers were promoting the idea of forcing the entry of the humanitarian aid, I was afraid of that because anyone can smuggle some boxes from Colombia to Venezuela. I mean, it's easy because there's a lot of jungle in that border. So and there are a lot of small paths that people use to smuggle things between Venezuela and Colombia and vice versa. So it's going to be very easy if they want to smuggle small quantities of boxes with humanitarian aid or weapons against Venezuela. But I believe that the most possible option is that they drop those weapons in Colombia, as I already mentioned, to arm this insurgent group, right-winger insurgent group in Colombia that is going to try to promote some sort of attacks against Venezuela, especially in the military posts around the border. That's a big possibility that I believe that can happen. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, and also, I know that, like, the military in Venezuela is, like, are united in defense of the Maduro government. Can you talk a lot about, like, the Chavista militias that have grown in the country? I believe maybe 1.5 million Chavista militiamen and women.
Yes, Maduro have announced, especially in recent months, that I believe that he wants the militias to reach the number of 2 million. That's something that was not created by Maduro. I mean, that actually was created by Chavez, and it's part of his. I mean, we have to remember that Chavez was a military guy, but a very different kind of a military guy, and he was always with this idea of what he called the perfect binomy, which is people and armed forces. And within that concept, he promoted the idea of the militia, which is basically organized communities that participate in military training to defend the country in the case of an aggression. And I believe that that's great that Chavez did that, because right now, in front of the possible military aggression from abroad, we have that. And we have seen that strengthening in recent weeks or days. I believe that, of course, because we have the real threat of being, attacked from abroad. So I don't have a lot of details about that. I'm not close to the process, but I know and I hear that especially in barrios and in the countryside of Venezuela, there's a lot of people organizing around that, like in communal councils, in communes, that connects that militia with the army, and they try to create this symbiosis to make the militia working, and they are training more people lately. So we are preparing ourselves to the worst case scenario, if you ask me. And I believe that that is the best way to defend your country, not only to have the military, but also the regular Venezuelans trained to defend the country to do that. Actually, in military exercises a few days ago, sorry, there was the first launch of a bazooka by a militiaman in Venezuelan history, and they show it on national TV here in Venezuela, and we, the Chavistas, feel very proud of that, because that shows how, you know, that training has been happening. You know, they are training our militia also not to use weapons or rifles or whatever, but also to use a relatively heavy weapon like bazookas and rocket launchers, things like that. And it's important also to say, thank you, and it's important also to say that we have very robust military defense systems that we bought years ago from Russia. We, for example, have the S-300 missile systems the Russians have, and that the U.S. is always afraid of, because it's a very robust anti-missile defense system. So we have, and I've seen photos of those S-300 rockets being moved around the country, and that's the worst part of that system, which is that they are mobile. So you can move them from places to places in accordance to what you need to defend. So I believe that that's one of the systems that scared the U.S. military the most, but that doesn't mean that they cannot, I mean, the U.S. military capability can smash us very easy, but what we say is that they might enter Venezuela, but the problem is how are they going to get out of Venezuela? That's what our people have to say. Yeah.
Hello, Jesus. Under the
Nice
pressure,
to see you.
nice to see you, brother. Under the pressure of the economic blockade and the sanctions, the military threats, is the government, in addition to its military actions, organizing the economy to strengthen the socialist sector and reduce the power economically of the right wing?
That's a good question. I haven't seen that, and a lot of friends have been, not a lot of friends, because when you are in front of a situation like the one that we are living right now in Venezuela, that goes like to the second level of priorities. But some friends of us has been talking about that and about the necessity of even taking more radical economic decisions to try, especially to get rid of the agro-business monopolies that we have in Venezuela. But it's complex, and I don't, if you ask me, I don't see that the government is going to do that, because that's like put an additional risk of problems of delivery of food in Venezuela. We already have problems of food availability in recent months that have decreased, but we have that threat, and we have the threat of being, you know, blockade or something like that. So I believe that the government have to, you know, I don't know how you say it in English, but play very delicate in taking decisions around that issue, because taking the wrong decision can make things worse. But if you ask me my position, I'm sympathetic of doing that. But if you ask me, I believe that right now is like not the right moment to do that, unless they take the most radical. I mean, unless we are in the middle of aggression, direct military aggression from abroad. And if you ask me, that happened, we're gonna be forced to take more radical decisions and take control of, for example, the bank system or the agro-business monopolies that control most of the Venezuelan, at least food economy. So yes, that's there. I know that that's something that works a lot of socialist, progressive friend of us, but it's complicated to talk about those things when you are in the middle of the threat that we are living politically.
Thank you.
This is one that
Yeah.
I have just in general to people listening from the U.S. and I'm also Facebook Living mine, so we're on Facebook with you. But I was wondering how people understand when you hear that the U.S. government is asking the Venezuelan military to disobey the commands of their duly elected president. They're actually asking them to be traitors to their own government. And I'm wondering if, I mean, to me, the first thing I would think of was, can you imagine somebody coming to the U.S. and telling the military here to
Yes,
disobey
of
the
course.
commander-in-chief, no matter how crazy he is?
Yes, crazy.
The idea that you can actually ask your own country to turn against their own government in the service of someone who you see, for example, detaining people at the border and taking children from their families, or doing some of the many other things that the whole world has been watching since this administration has sort of been very open about atrocities that we haven't
Yes,
ever
yes.
seen in our lifetime. So I'm wondering, like, how do people understand that, even with the media propaganda?
Yes, it's complicated when you talk about the people and we differentiate between the Chavistas and the right wingers. If you ask me, the right wingers, they just dream of us being invaded by the US. That's the only option that they see. So it's crazy, but that's a fact. That's a fact, and I don't know if you see, but there are photos of the last demonstration. Last weekend there was a Cuálido demonstration, right-winger demonstration, and they have Captain America, Thor, and all the Marvel characters there, and they were taking photos of them, and they were Wonder Woman. Everyone was there in costumes, and they feel happy because they think that Captain America is going to come and rescue them. So. It's crazy about that. That's also another part of Venezuela that we have to highlight. I mean, those guys already exist, and they're crazy enough to dream on a U.S. military intervention. And that's crazy, but that is there. And from the side of the Chavista, of course, that's, if you ask me, I see and when I see all those tweets and declarations from Trump, from John Bolton, from Pompeo, from Elliot Abrams, from let's don't talk about Rubio. When you see whatever crazy thing they post online or they say publicly about Venezuela and the Venezuelan army, you just want to vomit sometimes, to throw up sometimes, because I mean, Rubio a few days ago posted something about the head of the Secret Service of Maduro and say that they know him and that they are going to do something against his kids, something like that. I mean, a public threat against the head of the security of the president of Venezuela. And he was like in Twitter doing that. And there was a lot of indignant around, a lot of progressive people in Twitter, and I believe that some of them promoted like a campaign to denounce that was in violation of Twitter policies, but Twitter doesn't do anything because Twitter and Facebook are tools from the CIA also. So we have to be aware of that. I'm not saying that people need to use Twitter and all the social media not knowing that those networks and those companies are controlled by the U.S. government. But we have to do something. At least that's something that we have handy and that we have to use until they block us or until they ban us. And they do that a lot. Actually, there's a debate in Venezuela recently about Twitter closing more than 2,000 accounts of Chavistas in Venezuela and allowing the use of bots by right-wingers in Venezuela, and there's people, we have been posting information about that in Orinoco Tribune, people that have been researching about that and discovering that the right-wingers use something that is completely forbidden, supposedly, against Venezuela to promote their the media trends that they try to sell against Venezuela. So whenever I hear someone saying that crazy shit about giving out, I mean, and we also have the problem of, for example, we have Guaidó, which is a Venezuelan, and it's the first time in Venezuelan history that any politician, at least any politician with ideas of becoming a president, has been publicly saying that the possibility of a military intervention is there. It's the first time in Venezuelan history that something like that happened. So that's to give you an idea of how crazy the thing is. And from the other side, you have the people in the U.S. trying to do that with this traitor, but at least it's more understandable in the sense that you know that the U.S. has been doing a lot of that in his history, and it's nothing new. And they believe that they are doing a great thing, and maybe they believe that they are talking to that army they are used to control, but the truth is that the Venezuelan army is very inspired by Bolivar. In Bolivar, our independence hero, was anti-imperialistic to the core. So they can count with those things. Not to talk about Chavez, which all of you know him, but I mean the principles of the Venezuelan military are very radicalist in terms of anti-imperialism, at least. So I believe that they can keep doing that, and they are gonna gain anything. If you ask me, of course they are rolling tomatoes everywhere, and I know that they might have we might have additional defections from the army, but that do not represent the majority of the army. Actually, I was reading a few days ago that the government have a counting of 109 military that have defeated to Colombia in recent days. 109. The opposition has been talking about 300, but the Venezuelan government has made some countings of real military people, active military people, because the opposition right-wingers and the U.S. are using numbers of defectors of 2 years of last year or 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they're trying to make a big number out of the number of defectors for the last decade. But the truth is that in recent weeks, only 109 military have defeated, have been leaving to the Colombian side of the border, especially.
Yeah, hi, Jesus. I have a question, and it could be a bit broad, so take it wherever you want, of course. But you spoke.
Can you get closer to the mic?
Yeah,
sorry.
Of course. No, of course. So I was wondering if you could speak a bit about how this situation has changed Venezuela's foreign relations policies. You mentioned, kind of India stepping up with this, increased oil exports. In one situation in particular that I'm curious about is the situation with Venezuela's relationship with Brazil. And, despite, the election of, the right-wing Bolsonaro, I was surprised to find that they weren't going to allow the U.S., give them, space or, ground or airspace to launch a military operation against Venezuela.
Yes, that's a good point. It's a good point.